The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the massive stadium. Thousands of excited spectators filled the stands, their cheers echoing through the air as they awaited the beginning of the National Track and Field Championships. On the track, the athletes stood in their lanes, ready to race. Among them, Ava Thompson, a young woman in her late teens, stood out. Her long, dark hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, and her athletic build was a testament to years of dedication and hard work. Ava had always been fast. It wasn't just her training that made her great, it was something deeper, something natural. Her speed was a gift, a power that set her apart from everyone else. It was the reason she had made it this far, the reason she was standing at the starting line of the biggest race of her life. Today, she was not just competing for a medal. She was racing for the chance to prove herself, to show the world that she could be the best. As the crowd quieted, the announcer's voice boomed through the loudspeakers. "Runners, take your marks." Ava bent down, her knees slightly bent as she positioned herself in her starting stance. Her heart pounded in her chest. The feeling of the track beneath her, the tension in the air, it was all so familiar. But today felt different. Today, something was off. She couldn't put her finger on it, but the nagging feeling of unease grew stronger by the second. Get set. Ava took a deep breath, focusing all her energy on the race ahead. She had trained for this moment for years. Every early morning run, every grueling workout had led her here. She couldn't afford to let any distractions get in her way. Not today. Not now. The starting gun cracked through the air, and Ava exploded off the line, her legs moving in a blur. She pushed herself harder than ever before, the sound of her breath filling her ears. The wind rushed past her as she accelerated, her body becoming a machine perfectly tuned and built for speed. For a moment, she was lost in the rhythm of the race, the world around her fading away. She didn't see the other runners anymore. She didn't hear the crowd cheering. It was just her and the track. Every stride was effortless, every movement smooth. She felt invincible, like nothing could touch her. But then, a strange sensation washed over her, a cold, creeping feeling that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. It was as though something was watching her, not just watching. Something was waiting. The feeling sent a chill through her body, breaking her focus for just a split second. Her foot landed wrong, throwing her off balance. For a moment, it felt like time slowed. She struggled to regain her form, but the hesitation was enough to make her falter. Her competitors surged past her, leaving her behind. Panic flared in her chest, but she pushed it down, refocusing on the race. She fought to catch up, but the odd sensation of being watched didn't go away. It followed her, a dark presence just beyond the edge of her awareness, growing stronger with every passing second. Ava glanced to the side, half expecting to see someone, or something, standing there, but the stadium was full of spectators, all cheering, none looking at her with the strange intensity she felt. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she rounded the final bend. She could see the finish line ahead, but her legs were burning, her body screaming for relief. She pushed through the pain, giving everything she had left. With one final burst of speed, she crossed the finish line. The crowd erupted into cheers, but Ava barely heard them. She slowed to a jog, her heart still racing from the effort. She had done it. She had won. But the feeling of unease didn't fade. If anything, it was stronger now. Ava pulled off her race bib and wiped the sweat from her forehead, trying to shake off the lingering discomfort. She was surrounded by the sounds of celebration, the cheers of the crowd, the clapping of her fellow athletes. Yet, in the midst of it all, she felt strangely alone, as if something had shifted in the air, something she couldn't understand. "Ava Thompson!" The announcer's voice rang out, calling her name to the crowd. "Winner of the women's 100-meter dash!" Ava turned toward the podium, forcing a smile onto her face as she walked toward the waiting reporters and her coach, Coach Mitchell. He greeted her with a proud grin, clapping her on the back. "You did it, Ava! That was some race," he said, his voice filled with excitement. Ava nodded, though she wasn't fully there. Something felt off. She was having trouble shaking the feeling of being watched. "Hey, you okay?" Coach Mitchell asked, noticing her distracted expression. "Yeah, just a little tired," Ava replied with a forced smile. She didn't want to worry him. She had worked hard for this moment, and she didn't want anything to take it away. But the dark feeling that had been following her refused to let go. As the reporters surrounded her, asking questions and snapping photos, Ava did her best to keep her composure. But her mind kept drifting. She couldn't stop glancing over her shoulder, as though expecting to see someone or something there. The strange sensation of being hunted, of being known, gnawed at her. After a few minutes, the crowd began to thin, and Ava felt a strange wave of relief. The race was over. She had won. And yet, the unease remained. Ava grabbed her bag and headed for the locker room. She needed a moment to herself, a chance to collect her thoughts. The locker room was mostly empty, the only sounds the distant hum of the stadium outside and the soft shuffle of her sneakers on the tiled floor. She opened her locker and began to change, trying to push the feeling of dread out of her mind. But it wouldn't go away. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled off her sweaty uniform. Every part of her felt tense, as if she were waiting for something to happen. Just then, she heard footsteps. Ava turned, expecting to see one of her teammates, but there was no one there. The footsteps stopped as suddenly as they had begun. She frowned, feeling her pulse quicken. She was alone, right? But then a voice, a whisper, barely audible, reached her ears. "Ava." The blood in her veins turned cold. She spun around, heart pounding in her chest. There was no one there, no one at all. "Hello?" she called, her voice trembling. But the room remained silent. She shook her head, trying to calm herself. She was just tired. The race had taken a lot out of her, and now she was imagining things. Ava quickly finished changing, determined to leave the locker room and head home. But as she walked to the door, she caught sight of something strange. A shadow that seemed to move on its own, creeping across the floor like it had a mind of its own. She froze. The door opened behind her with a loud creak, and she didn't have to look to know someone was standing there. She could feel it. Someone, or something, was standing right behind her. "Ava!" The voice again. This time it was clearer, more distinct. It was deep, cold and chilling, as if it came from somewhere far beyond this world. Ava's breath hitched in her throat. She spun around, but there was no one there. The hallway outside the locker room was empty, just the quiet hum of the fluorescent lights. Ava's heart raced as she hurried out of the room and into the stadium's hallways. She didn't know what was happening, but she knew one thing for sure. Something was coming for her, and it knew her name. Ava couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As she stepped out of the locker room and into the dimly lit hallway of the stadium, her footsteps echoed off the walls. The stadium was mostly empty now, the crowd's cheers replaced by the quiet hum of the lights above her. She walked faster, her breath coming a little quicker as the strange sensation followed her every step. The feeling was like a shadow at her back, lingering just out of sight. No matter how fast she moved or how many times she turned around, it was there. Ava felt a chill run down her spine, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. She reached the exit doors, the cold air from outside rushing in as she pushed them open. Ava squinted against the bright lights of the parking lot, still feeling the weight of the unease on her shoulders. She glanced around, half expecting to see someone or something waiting for her. But there was no one, just the empty cars parked in neat rows. Ava shook her head, trying to calm herself. It had been a long day. She had just won the race of her life, and the strange feeling was probably just a result of all the stress and excitement. It would pass. She was overthinking it. But as she stepped into the parking lot, something caught her eye. A figure. A man standing near her car, watching her. He was tall, dressed in a dark coat, his face partially hidden by the hood pulled low over his head. Ava's heart skipped a beat. There was something about the way he stood, still and unmoving, that made her feel even more uneasy. She froze for a moment, unsure whether to approach or turn back. But then, the man raised his head slightly, and Ava saw his eyes, dark, intense, and full of purpose. He didn't say anything, but Ava felt the unmistakable sense that he was waiting for her, like he knew exactly who she was and what she had just done. Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she couldn't move. It was as though her body refused to listen to her mind, frozen by the weight of his gaze. Then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows between the cars. Ava's heart raced, her mind spinning with questions. Who was he? Why had he been watching her? She quickly got into her car, locking the doors behind her. The engine roared to life as she sped out of the parking lot, her hands gripping the wheel tightly. She couldn't get the man's eyes out of her mind. They seemed to haunt her, following her even as she drove down the quiet streets, away from the stadium and into the safety of the familiar neighborhoods. But the feeling of being watched never left. Ava's phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen. It was a message from her coach, Coach Mitchell. "Great job today, Ava. Proud of you. Meet me tomorrow morning to go over some of your training." Ava sighed in relief. At least she had that to look forward to, a sense of normalcy. She wasn't ready to deal with the strange feeling, the man, or anything else. She just wanted to put it all behind her for now. She pulled into her driveway and parked the car. As she grabbed her bag and stepped out, she looked around the quiet street. There was nothing unusual, but the hair on the back of her neck stood up once again. She shook her head, forcing herself to ignore it. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she just needed some sleep. But as she walked toward the front door, the unmistakable sound of footsteps reached her ears. Slowly, carefully, Ava turned her head. A shadow moved across the street, just out of her sight. It wasn't someone she recognized. The shape was too tall, too slim to be a neighbor. Her breath quickened as the figure stepped out of the shadows. The same man, the one from the parking lot. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, everything else seemed to disappear. It was just her and him. The strange, overwhelming feeling of dread washed over her again, stronger this time. She took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. What did he want from her? "Ava," the man said, his voice low and calm, but there was something in it that made her blood run cold. "We need to talk." She didn't know how to respond. Her mouth was dry, her body frozen in place. Before she could say anything, the man took a step forward, his movements slow and deliberate. Ava took a step back, almost instinctively. She was about to turn and run when she heard another voice. "Ava!" She spun around, relief flooding her chest when she saw Ethan, a tall young man with messy brown hair rushing toward her from the sidewalk. Ethan was someone she had met recently, a guy she'd bumped into a few times at the track. They had talked a bit, but she didn't know much about him beyond that. "Get inside," Ethan said, his voice urgent, his eyes darting to the man who was still standing across the street, watching them. Ava didn't hesitate. She bolted for the door, slamming it shut behind her just as Ethan reached her. Her heart was still racing, but now there was no time to question what had just happened. Ethan had seen the man, too. "Who was that?" Ava asked, trying to catch her breath. "Why is he following me?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He paced back and forth in the living room, clearly trying to think of the right words. "That man, he's not just some stranger," Ethan finally said, his tone serious. "He's part of something much bigger, and right now you're in danger." Ava's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "I know this might sound crazy," Ethan continued, "but you've been marked. The moment you crossed that finish line today, something inside you triggered, and now they're after you." "Who is?" Ava asked, her voice shaking. "The entity," Ethan said. "It's a dark force that's been hunting people like you for centuries. People with extraordinary abilities. People like me." "Like you?" Ava repeated, confused. "What are you talking about? I'm just a runner." Ethan looked at her, his expression grave. "You're more than that, Ava. Your speed, it's not just natural, it's a power that can change everything." Ava stared at him, trying to make sense of what he was saying. "I don't understand. I just want to live my life. I didn't ask for any of this." "I know," Ethan said. "But now they're after you, and we don't have much time." Ava's world felt like it was spinning. Everything she had known, everything she had worked for, seemed to be collapsing around her. There was no way she could be part of something like this. She was just an athlete. She was just Ava Thompson. She wasn't a target. She wasn't anyone special. But the truth was, she didn't know what she was anymore. Ava's mind was racing. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion, doubt, and fear. She had always been an athlete, focused on running, on winning, on being the best. But now, Ethan's words echoed in her head, and the reality of what he said was impossible to ignore. The entity, a dark force, powers beyond her understanding. Ava shook her head, trying to push the thoughts aside. This couldn't be real. She couldn't just suddenly be part of some battle between ancient powers. She was just Ava Thompson, a track athlete with a love for running fast. But then, there was the man, the one who had been watching her at the stadium, the one who had followed her home. His eyes, they weren't just eyes. There was something cold and calculating in them, something ancient. And when he spoke her name, it wasn't like he was calling her, it was like he knew her, like he had been waiting for her. And now Ethan was telling her that she was a target, that her speed was more than just talent, it was power. "You're not just a runner, Ava," Ethan said again, his voice steady but urgent. "That man who followed you, that's one of them. One of the entity's agents. They know who you are. They know what you are." Ava sat down on the couch, her legs suddenly feeling weak. "I don't understand. I've always been fast. I've always been good at running." "Why is this happening now?" "Because the entity has been searching for people like you for years," Ethan explained. "It's been looking for individuals who have abilities that can be used to either feed its power or destroy it. Your speed, Ava, it's not just a gift. It's a key to something much larger." Ava rubbed her temples, trying to process everything Ethan was saying. "A key? To what?" "To the entity's power," Ethan answered, his voice darkening. "It wants to control people like you, to use your abilities for its own purposes. It's an ancient force, older than anything we understand. And it's powerful, more powerful than anything you can imagine." "But why me?" Ava asked, the words barely escaping her lips. "Why now? Why didn't I know about this before?" "Because," Ethan said, taking a seat next to her, "you're not the only one with abilities. But your speed, it's different. It's something they didn't expect. And when you crossed that finish line today, Ava, something inside you triggered. Your power awakened in a way it never has before." Ava felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The race. The moment she had crossed the finish line. That was when it all started. That was when the feeling of being watched began. And it was no coincidence that the man had shown up just after the race. The entity was already aware of her. "Ethan, I don't want this," Ava said, her voice cracking. "I just wanted to run. I just wanted to be the best. I didn't ask for any of this." I know, Ethan said softly. None of us did. But it's here now, Ava. And we don't have much time. The entity will come for you again. And when it does, we have to be ready. Ava looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. What do you mean, ready? What can I do? I'm just a girl who can run fast. I'm not some hero. You are, Ethan said, his voice firm. You don't see it yet, but you have the power to stop it, to end it. Your speed, it's more than just running. You're connected to something bigger, Ava, something that can destroy the entity. Ava stared at him, unsure whether to believe him or not. How could her speed have anything to do with stopping something like the entity? She had never been involved in anything like this. She had never even considered the idea of having powers. She was just a girl who loved to run. There's a place, Ethan continued, a safe house where we can go. A place where people like us, people with powers, are training to fight the entity. We can't stay here, not with the entity's agents watching you. It's only a matter of time before they come for you again. Ava shook her head. I'm not a fighter. I don't know how to fight something like this. You don't have to fight alone, Ethan said gently. There are others who have been through this before. They can teach you how to use your abilities, how to control them. Ava thought about it for a moment. She had no choice. The entity was coming for her, and there was nowhere safe. But if what Ethan was saying was true, if her speed was more than just a gift, then maybe she had a chance. But a chance at what? To destroy an ancient force, to save herself. Ava, Ethan said, his voice soft, this is bigger than you or me. The entity isn't just after you, it's after everyone who has powers like yours. And it's been hunting them for centuries. We have to stop it. Ava took a deep breath. It wasn't like she had any other choice. The darkness was coming for her, and she couldn't hide from it forever. Okay, she said quietly. Where do we go? Ethan smiled, though there was no humor in it. I'll take you to the safe house, but you need to understand something. Once we go there, there's no turning back. You'll be trained to fight, to protect yourself, but most importantly, you'll have to make a choice that will change everything. Choice? Ava repeated. What kind of choice? The choice of whether you're ready to fight, Ethan said, his eyes serious. Because the entity is coming, and when it does, it won't stop until it has what it wants. Ava stood up, feeling the weight of Ethan's words press down on her. This was real. There was no denying it anymore. She was caught in the middle of something she didn't understand, something far bigger than anything she had ever imagined. I'm ready, Ava said, her voice steady now, though the fear was still there, lurking beneath the surface. I don't know if I can stop it, but I'll try. Ethan gave her a nod of approval. That's all we can do. We'll train you, Ava, and when the time comes, you'll have the strength to face it. We'll make sure of it. Ava nodded back, though doubt still clung to her heart. What kind of strength did she have? Could she really face the entity? Could she really protect herself? She didn't know, but she had to try. The next few days felt like a blur. Ava was still reeling from everything Ethan had told her. It was hard to believe that her life, her entire world, had changed so suddenly. One moment, she was training to be the best athlete she could be, and the next, she was running for her life from something she couldn't even understand. Ethan had taken her to a small, nondescript house on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place that looked completely ordinary on the outside, but inside, it was anything but. As soon as they stepped through the door, Ava could feel the tension in the air. It was like everyone was waiting for something, but no one was sure what. The house was filled with people who were like her, people who had abilities. Some of them looked normal, just like her, while others had strange tattoos or scars, as though they had been through battles she couldn't even imagine. This is the safe house, Ethan explained, leading her through the small hallway. Everyone here has been through something similar to what you're going through. We've all been hunted by the entity in one way or another, and we've learned how to fight back. Ava nodded, trying to absorb everything. She had no idea what to expect. She had only known Ethan for a short time, and yet he was already leading her into a world she never thought she'd be a part of. They entered a large room at the back of the house. It was clear that this was where most of the training took place. There were punching bags hanging from the ceiling, weapons stacked along one wall, and a few computers set up with maps and files. "Everyone, this is Ava," Ethan called out, turning to the group in the room. "She's new to all of this, but she has a power that can help us. I need you all to help train her." Ava felt a little nervous as everyone turned to look at her. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, and she certainly wasn't used to being introduced as someone with power. "Don't worry," Ethan said, sensing her discomfort. "They're here to help. Everyone here has been through the same thing." One of the women in the group stepped forward. She was tall, with short blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. She looked strong, and Ava couldn't help but feel a little intimidated by her. "I'm Maya," the woman said with a firm handshake. "I've been where you are. I know how scary it can be, but you're not alone here." Ava smiled weakly. "Thanks. I don't really know what I'm doing." "We all start somewhere," Maya said. "I'll help you get started with basic training. Trust me. You'll pick it up fast." Ava wasn't so sure about that, but she nodded, hoping Maya's confidence was enough to give her a little boost. As the days passed, Ava began her training. It wasn't easy. There were times when she felt like giving up, especially when she struggled to keep up with the others. Her speed was still there, of course, but it wasn't enough. Not when the entity was involved. Not when the stakes were so high. Every morning, she worked with Maya, learning basic combat skills. They practiced hand-to-hand combat, self-defense, and how to handle weapons. Ava wasn't exactly excited about learning to fight, but she knew it was necessary. The entity wasn't going to stop just because she didn't want to fight. In the afternoons, Ethan would take her aside and teach her how to control her speed. At first, it felt impossible. She had always just run. She had never thought about it in terms of control. But now, with Ethan's guidance, she learned how to tap into her power without losing control. "Don't think about the finish line," Ethan said one afternoon as they stood in a large open space. "Think about the flow. Let the speed come to you. Don't chase it." Ava took a deep breath, trying to focus. She wasn't sure how, but she could feel something shift within her. It wasn't like before, when she just pushed herself to run faster. This was different. She could feel the power within her, just beneath the surface, waiting to be released. She started to run, slowly at first, letting the feeling of the ground beneath her feet guide her. Her movements were fluid, controlled. And then, as she picked up speed, she felt it, the familiar rush of wind against her skin, the feeling of flying. But this time, it wasn't out of control. This time, she was in charge. "Good," Ethan said, nodding. "Now speed up." Ava didn't need to be told twice. She pushed herself harder, her legs moving faster and faster. The world around her blurred as she reached her maximum speed. She felt like she was flying, like she could go anywhere, do anything. But then, as quickly as it came, the feeling faded. She slowed down, out of breath but exhilarated. "You did it," Ethan said with a proud smile. "You're learning to control it." Ava grinned. For the first time since all of this started, she felt a little hope. Maybe she could do this. Maybe she could really make a difference. But as she looked around the room, she knew that the road ahead would not be easy. She wasn't just learning to fight for herself. She was learning to fight for everyone. The next few days, the training became more intense. Ava grew stronger, faster, and more confident. But it wasn't just the physical training that was hard. It was the mental part. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see the man's eyes, the cold, unfeeling gaze that had followed her from the parking lot. She could hear his voice in her mind, whispering her name. Ava. It wasn't just a memory. It was a warning, and she knew deep down that the entity wasn't done with her yet. One evening, as they sat around the table eating dinner, the door to the safe house opened. A tall, muscular man walked in. His dark hair was messy and his expression was serious, almost grim. "This is Jack," Maya said, standing up. "He's been tracking the entity for years. If anyone knows how to fight it, it's him." Jack nodded curtly, his gaze scanning the room before landing on Ava. "I've heard a lot about you," he said in a deep voice. "You've got potential, but you need to understand. This fight isn't just about your speed, it's about more than that." Ava swallowed. "What do you mean?" Jack sat down at the table, his eyes never leaving hers. "The entity doesn't just want your abilities, it wants control. And if we don't stop it now, it'll take over everything. Not just us, everyone." Ava felt the weight of his words. She knew this wasn't going to be easy. She knew that the entity would stop at nothing to get what it wanted. But as she looked around the room, at the people who were willing to fight by her side, she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't alone. They were in this together. And together, they would fight to stop the entity. No matter what. The air was thick with tension as Ava stood alongside her new allies. The safe house, once a place of training and preparation, had now become their base for the final assault. They had been tracking the entity for days, moving from place to place, staying one step ahead of its agents. But now, they knew where it was hiding. And now, they were ready. "We don't have much time," Jack said, his voice low and steady. He had been their leader throughout the preparation, always calm, always focused. "The entity is hiding in an old facility on the outskirts of town. It's protected by its agents, but we can get in. We have the element of surprise." Ava nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never imagined she would be standing here, preparing to face the force that had been hunting her for so long. She wasn't just fighting for her life anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been marked by the entity. "Do you think we can do it?" Maya asked, her voice a mix of hope and uncertainty. "We have no choice," Jack replied. "This is our chance. If we don't stop the entity now, it will only keep hunting people like us, like Ava, and it will only get stronger." Ava felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She was scared, of course, but she had been scared ever since she realized what was happening. She couldn't afford to let fear stop her now. She had trained for this moment. She had learned to control her power. Now it was time to put everything she had learned to the test. Jack turned to her. "Ava, you know what to do. You're faster than all of us. Your speed is our advantage, but remember, don't just run. Stay focused. We need you to get inside and disable their security systems. You'll be our eyes on the inside." Ava took a deep breath. This was it. She had always been good at running, but now it was more than just a race. It was the fight for her life, and for the lives of everyone who had ever been marked by the entity. "I'll do it," Ava said, her voice steady. She didn't feel invincible, but she felt ready. She knew that this was her chance to stop the entity once and for all. The group moved quickly, quietly, through the dark streets. Ava could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on her, but she pushed it aside. There was no turning back now. As they reached the facility, Ava's heart began to race again. The building was large, dark, and menacing. It looked abandoned, but she knew better. The entity's agents were hiding inside, waiting for them. "We're going in," Jack whispered, his voice filled with determination. "Stay sharp." Ava nodded, her body tense. She could feel the presence of the entity's agents even before she saw them. They were everywhere, hidden in the shadows, watching, waiting. The air felt thick with danger. They moved through the facility, staying low, avoiding detection. Ava's speed made her the perfect scout. She darted through hallways, scouting ahead for traps or hidden enemies. Her mind was focused, every movement calculated. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears, but she didn't let it distract her. The entity's agents were out there, and she had a job to do. "Move up," Jack whispered into the comms. "We're almost there." Ava reached the control room first. The door was locked, but it was nothing she couldn't handle. She reached into her bag, pulling out a small device that Jack had given her. With a few quick movements, she bypassed the security systems, and the door clicked open. Inside, the room was filled with computers and monitors, all showing various parts of the facility. Ava quickly scanned the screens, searching for anything that would give them an advantage. She found it. A central control hub where the entity's agents were monitoring the building. "There it is," she said, her voice calm but urgent. "I can disable the system, but I'll need a few minutes." "Do it," Jack replied. "We'll cover you." Ava worked quickly, her fingers flying over the keyboard. She could feel the agents moving closer. Their presence growing stronger. They were getting closer to the control room, and Ava knew they didn't have much time. But she stayed focused, blocking out the fear, blocking out everything except for the task at hand. As she typed in the final code, the facility's security system shut down. The lights flickered, and the hum of the machines quieted. It was done. "We're in," Ava said, her voice a little breathless. "The system is down. You're clear to move in." Jack's voice came through the comms. "Good job, Ava. Now get out of there. We've got company." Ava didn't hesitate. She sprinted back toward the entrance, moving faster than she ever had before. The building seemed to stretch out before her, every hallway becoming a blur as she ran. She could hear the agents chasing her, their footsteps echoing through the halls. But she was faster. She was always faster. She reached the main door, but it was locked. She didn't waste time. She slammed into it with all her force, feeling the wood splinter as it gave way. The door crashed open, and Ava bolted outside, her feet barely touching the ground. The cool night air hit her face as she ran, her body moving in perfect rhythm. She could feel the agents hot on her heels. But she wasn't worried. She had trained for this. She was ready. Ahead of her, Jack and the others were waiting. Ava's heart raced, but she didn't slow down. She reached them in seconds, and without breaking stride, she veered off to the side, creating a distraction so they could get inside. "We've got to move," Jack said, his voice urgent. "It's not over yet." They rushed through the building's entrance, heading toward the heart of the entity's lair. Ava knew that the final battle was just beginning. The entity was here, and they were going to face it head-on. As they reached the main chamber, the air grew colder. Ava could feel the entity's presence, even though she couldn't see it. It was all around them, its darkness, its power. And then she saw it. The entity was standing at the center of the room, its form shifting and changing, as though it was made of shadows and smoke. Its eyes, if they could even be called eyes, glowed with a malevolent light, and its presence seemed to fill the room. Ava felt a surge of fear, but she pushed it aside. This was it. This was the moment she had been training for. "We're going to need all of us," Jack said, his voice low and steady. "Ava, use your speed. We need to keep it off balance." Ava nodded. She didn't hesitate. She ran, faster than she ever had before. She was a blur of motion, darting in and out, keeping the entity off guard. But the entity wasn't an easy target. It shifted with every attack, its form bending and twisting, avoiding her every move. But Ava didn't stop. She kept running, her body pushing beyond its limits, using everything she had learned. She could feel the power within her, the speed, the control. She was in control. And then, for the first time, she saw an opening. With a final burst of speed, Ava collided with the entity. Her body moved faster than it could react, her power surging through the air, breaking through its defenses. The entity screamed, a sound like the tearing of reality itself, as Ava's speed shattered its form. For a moment, everything was still, and then the entity was gone. The room was silent. Ava stood, breathing heavily, her heart pounding in her chest. She had done it. They had done it. The entity was gone. Jack stepped forward, his eyes full of respect. "You did it, Ava. You stopped it." Ava looked around at her friends, at the people who had fought alongside her. She hadn't done it alone. They had all played their part, but she had been the one to end it. She had been the one to stop the entity. She was no longer just a runner, she was a hero.